racing towards third. Are they going to send him? Here he comes. PCA to the plate. And wow! Hey! Inside the park home run. Pete Crow.
As there's a drive in a deep left field by Castellanos, it will be a home run. And so that'll make it a 4-0 ball game.
Hello. Welcome to the show. Happy February 18th to those of you that celebrate. It's time to talk some baseball. It's time for Baseball Buddies with Pat and Jeff. I'm Pat. That's Jeff. We're buddies. We like baseball. You get it. You understand the conceit of the show. Jeff, how's it going?
Not too bad. Little sinus infection going on. This is my last. When people are watching this will be my last day as a 40-year-old, and then I'll be 41 the day after. How about that?
How about the fact that I
my 40s.
I pretend to be your friend. We have a show that purports that we're buddies, and yet I had no idea that your birthday was tomorrow. Happy birthday.
Hey, man, I appreciate that. Look, once you're 40, it's mostly pretending to be people's friends, so I get it. It's okay. Yeah.
Facts.
Yeah.
Plus, I live in L.A., so you combine the two.
Yeah, what are you even going to do for my birthday? Nothing. We're recording a podcast, and that's it. You said happy birthday. That's about all we need.
The podcast is the greatest gift that I can give, I feel like.
I would say I hope you don't even text me, frankly.
Well, I got good news for you. I will not be texting you. And I don't expect one on my birthday either. I will be 43 in April. It's all downhill. Honestly, once you get over 40, I feel like you want to forget about the day more than celebrate it. So I feel like I'm doing you a favor by not harping on it.
You know what? What started hurting me this year that never hurt me previously in my life?
Everything?
My hips.
Ooh.
Really? I'm going to be a hip replacement guy. I can already tell. I can't stop it. I don't know what's wrong.
I've never had the hip pain. I'm a lower back guy. Sciatica is in my future for sure.
Yeah. Well, it's nice to know the problems we're going to have, at least on that level, in a few years. To have some consistency in life in this crazy world. It's a good thing. But
yeah, I got the Kris Bryant disease, and you got the Bo Jackson one.
That's both of those things make me sad. So let's talk about other things in baseball.
Well, we'll talk about other things, but it won't be long before we get back to Kris Bryant. But let's start with Tony Clark, the former head of the Major League Baseball Players Association. He is no longer in that role after an internal investigation revealed an improper relationship with a relative. Now, let me be really clear here. Let's get the details out. The relative was a sister-in-law, so not a blood relative. I believe the exact math was his wife's brother's wife. Okay? Mm-hmm. And they had a relationship. And the reason that this was found out was because there was a whistleblower complaint against Tony Clark. Not for that specifically. Back in 2024, there was a whistleblower complaint alleging a number of things, one of which was nepotism. And I suppose this could fall under that category because this woman that he was having the relationship with, he hired her to work at the offices that they had just built in Arizona where she lived. So there's a lot of shady kind of behavior going on there. And this also comes at a very interesting time as we are potentially facing a lockout. Of course, that's been the talk about baseball for the last couple years. Every time the Dodgers sign a free agent, the talk is there's going to be a lockout. The owners are not going to stand for this. They're going to push for a salary cap. And Tony Clark, who thus far has gotten, I feel like, pretty good results for his players, will no longer be the guy leading those negotiations. Jeff, I just want to ask you this. What's your take on the entire thing, and how does this affect the Players Association as we head into these tumultuous waters?
Yeah, the thing that I thought of when I saw this come across is that, if you're a player, you're finally in this upcoming offseason going into an offseason in which there's a possibility for the first time in forever, maybe ever, in these negotiations, that fans don't use it's millionaires versus billionaires, why do I care? Because the overall thought on billionaires right now is like all these dudes are in the Epstein files. In fact, 3 like ownership pieces, at least in the MLB we know of, are in the Epstein files. And so you had this thing where people were like, for the first time, so anti-billionaire and not even thinking about millionaires, right? And then you have this just platter of yuck come out that just like, when you glance at it, the bile that almost comes up your throat to just vomit everywhere is wild. And so I think I doubt that Tony Clark was, the only negotiator there. I think maybe more of a face of the thing than anything else, right? And so they'll still have their negotiators, but the public backing that they may have had, the players, that little bit where people are so pissed at billionaires right now is potentially erased here because of this yuck. And so I'm pretty it's such a gross situation. I don't know what much else to say about it. But yeah, man, like, if you're a player, you're a little bummed right now because you're like, shit, now we look gross too to everybody. So, I don't know.
Well, I mean, the flip side of that is, if we want to play the state of the world due to the Epstein files card, relatively speaking, there's not a lot of yuck here. I've heard this is the least yucky story I've heard in a month.
Totally, but when you first read it, it sounds grosser, and then you have to go in to be like, oh, it's the husband of the wife of the husband, or whatever the thing is.
Yeah. I think we've been so conditioned to expect the grossest thing that you see this and you immediately do the math in your head in a way that is not accurate. You're not using Common Core, and you're ending up at the wrong place. In reality, I mean, look, let's just be realistic about this. I don't know of the two things what the bigger impropriety is. I assume it's just the combination of the two, because is hiring this woman nepotism? Of course, absolutely. Does nepotism exist in literally every job field in the entire world? Yeah, including sports. Nobody cared when Bill Belichick hired his kids or Andy Reid hired his kid. Like, sports is built on nepotism. Pete Rose Jr. played in the major leagues. Explain that. This is just part of the deal. I'm not saying it's right, and maybe I've worked in Hollywood too long that I've just accepted it, but this is the reality of the situation. Nepotism is a thing, and it's not exclusive to Tony Clark, of course. Additionally, hooking up with your wife's sister or your wife's husband's wife that's not exclusive to Tony Clark either. That stuff happens. I have cousins. I have 2 cousins. They're brothers. One of their marriages ended because the wife hooked up with the other brother. And believe it or not, the brothers are back on speaking terms. It seems like everything's cool. I don't know. I don't really fly back east to hang out, at the family reunions anymore. But it seems like they got past it. So this stuff happens. None of it's good. But on the sliding scale of gross in the world today, this really didn't, it's crazy to me that Tony Clark is like, well, everybody's like, clearly you can't have this job based on that. And meanwhile, like, the entire White House cabinet is full of, like, the worst people on earth, and nobody is going to suffer any consequences for anything.
Right.
It feels disproportionately unfair, but look, it is what it is. I think it's tough for the players to take any loss at this point in terms of, public relations, or, maybe Tony Clark was a really good negotiator. I mean, look, he oversaw a bunch of different things. He came on in 2013. He's been doing the job for a while. He, has faced labor strife before. How do we play coming out of 2020, the COVID season? How do we make half a season work? Like, he negotiated all that stuff. And I don't know what other people were involved if he was just the face, but the results under his leadership have been pretty good. So I think it's a hit for the players. I also think that by the time the negotiations roll around, it's not going to affect the billionaires versus millionaires thing too much, because so much of what's happening outside of the world of baseball in regards to, these files and everything else, who knows what the world is going to look like a year from now in terms of how people feel about billionaires. I guarantee you Tony Clark is not going to move the needle a whole lot in either direction.
Yeah, this is mostly just going to be a blip in the radar. But since we're here, let's talk about it. All right. There is, I almost would say, an expectation that we might have a lockout after this season. That's the general feeling right now. Yeah. I'm wondering where you are in your mind on that. And the biggest thing that we absolutely know is going to come up is going to be a salary cap.
Right.
And so where are you at on that? Is there any form of a cap that you think is good for the players? Is there any sort of agreement that can come to that you think would make the game better if we're walking into a cap situation?
First of all, I feel like there probably will be a lockout just because there's enough smoke around that fire, and I'm a pessimist. I would love to be pleasantly surprised. Last time it seemed like there was going to be a lockout. They avoided it at the last moment. It does seem like it's heading in that direction, though. And it has enough support amongst fans that it kind of surprises me that the owners have really any goodwill going into literally anything. But fans, obviously view the Dodgers as a huge problem, and it's not good for the sport. I'll be the first one to sit here and say it's not good. And I also am not going to fight anyone who says that there should be a salary cap. They have them in the other major sports. I don't think it's the solution. I think a salary floor would help out a lot more than a salary cap. But if you want to tell me baseball needs a salary cap, look, I'm not going to sit here and fight you. I just need you to understand two things. The first thing I need you to understand is that the game is going to continue to generate revenue with or without a salary cap. That revenue is going to have to go somewhere. It is no longer going to be going to the players. And if you're living in this fantasy world where it goes back in your pockets via cheaper tickets, cheaper hot dogs, cheaper beer, cheaper parking, you're in for a rude awakening. Those prices are set based on supply and demand. They have absolutely nothing to do with payroll. If you're telling the owners, like, hey, you're going to have an extra $100 million this year, don't you want to use it to, give it back to the fans? I got news for you. They don't. They don't. The reason they're billionaires is because they don't like giving their money away. They like making more. So if you add a salary cap, okay, now the greedy millionaire players, fine, they're not going to get it, but it's going to go to the owners. It's going to go to the billionaires. If you're fine with that, that's fine, but please get out of this fantasy world where it's going to result in 1985 level tickets. Right now, Dodgers tickets are through the roof. You know why? Because the demand is very high for them because they've won back-to-back World Series. 40 miles down the road in Anaheim, they have the 4 for $44 bundle. You get 4 tickets, 4 hot dogs, 4 sodas for $44. That's pricing from when I was a kid, from when they would just give away free tickets with a gallon of gas. The reason the Angels have to do that is not because they're saving so much money on payroll. They're paying a ton of money.
Yeah,
they have a pretty high payroll, but it's supply and demand. It has nothing. It's not connected to payroll in any way. Nobody wants Angels tickets, so they have to give them away. Okay, so if you have all of a sudden a salary cap and your team is really good, the tickets are still going to be expensive. The Dodgers aren't magically going to be like, all right, we're going to make tickets $25 because they're going to sell out either way. Why not make all the money? So that's number one. I just need you to acknowledge that. If you're a salary cap person, just acknowledge that the savings aren't coming back to you. Number two, I need you to acknowledge that in other sports where the salary cap exists, we have data, we have evidence, and it points to the fact that it's not likely to make anything more competitive. It's just not. We don't have to deal with hypotheticals. We don't have to create a scenario and be like, what if this happens? What if that? Look at the NBA. Look at the NFL. You could see what happens. Now, they're structured differently, But the way it works in the NBA is they've incentivized players to sign extensions with the teams that draft them, which in theory is great, except for the fact that it works out the same way almost every time, which is the team that signs them can pay them more than the other teams. So they sign the extension after a couple of years. They don't have the 6-year, waiting period like you do in MLB. It would be less. It would go down to 3 or 4 years. You would be more likely to be able to sign your player to an extension. And then what happens is in 2 years, if you don't have a winner, they demand a trade. And not only do they demand a trade, they tell you what team they want to be traded to. And you just kind of have to do it because the players run everything. And if you don't cooperate, then other players are not going to want to play for you in the future. That's what's happening with Giannis now. It happened with AD. It's happened with countless guys. They choose where they want to go. Spoiler, it's always to one of 5 teams. And now you don't even have real negotiating leverage because you only have one potential trade partner. So if you think you're going to be frustrated as a Pirates fan now with Paul Skeens leaving at the end of 6 years, I want you to imagine a new scenario where after 3 years, you re-sign him to a contract, and then after 2 years of that, he goes, hey, I want to go to the Dodgers. And now you don't even have the free market where you could trade him and take the best offer. You got to take whatever the Dodgers offer. You got to take 10 cents on the dollar because it's the only option. Furthermore, when players become free agents, it's the same 5 teams they always want to go to. If you think that making money equal is going to benefit you, it's not. It's not. Because right now, yes, the Dodgers can outbid the Reds on any player that they want. And that's not ideal. It's not good. But the problem isn't fixed by putting a cap because now the Dodgers and Reds can offer the exact same amount of money to the superstar player that they both want. So now it doesn't even come down to money. The player just has to decide, would I rather live in Los Angeles or Cincinnati? And I got news for you. You're not winning that fight. No disrespect to Cincinnati, but most of these rich guys would rather live in Malibu than eat Skyline chili. It just is what it is. Especially if now they have to make up that money that they're losing with endorsements and everything like that. They're going to want to live in LA. Look at the NBA. Everybody wants to go to Miami. All the super teams are formed. Miami, Brooklyn, Los Angeles. That's it. That's where the players, they conspire. They take less money to go. You look at the NFL. Tom Brady took less money his whole career to help out with the cap. And it turned the Patriots into a dynasty. Is anybody sitting around watching the Tom Brady Patriots and going, thank God there's a cap. Thank God we have this parity and we don't keep getting the same shit every year. You do keep getting the same shit every year. There have been way more dynasties and repeat champions in the NBA and the NFL over the last 25 years than there have been in baseball. Everybody's a prisoner of the moment with the Dodgers right now, but before this, it hadn't happened since the late 90s with the Yankees. There is more parity in baseball than the other 2 sports, and the salary cap is not going to affect anything. It's not going to help out at all. You already have more parity. Be careful what you wish for.
Yeah, and I would add to that to another couple of aspects. You know what doesn't count against your salary cap? Anything in your organization. Any minor league coaches, your own coaches, the facilities that you have, the data scientists that you have, the development structure that you have, none of that stuff counts against your salary cap. And relative to what some teams are paying players, these are fairly cheap things that any team could be investing in. And the Dodgers are also great at that. So if you think that this is just going to make a team like the Dodgers go away, the Dodgers are certainly annoying because they can go out and get Shohei Ohtani and then go get, Kyle Tucker and Mookie Betts and Freddie Freeman and get all these guys and put together this ridiculous pitching staff. But the annoying thing about the Dodgers is that there's always some fucking guy who's really good that just comes, like last year was like Andy Pajes. You know what I mean? Will Smith, they developed that guy. They, a lot of these pitchers, they developed those guys. And so, that's not going to help the Pirates if we put in a salary like a team that hasn't been able to develop any players. There are teams right now where you can look at a top 100 prospect list and you can see a team that's got, 4, 5, 6 guys on the top prospect list. And I got to tell you, if I see that team is the Chicago White Sox or the Pittsburgh Pirates or any other number of teams, I'm going to tell you right now, like, that doesn't mean as much to me as it might to you just glancing at a top prospect thing, because I'm like, I know those organizations probably aren't properly developing that talent.
Yeah.
And so there's not as good of a shot that we're going to see any sort of impact from those guys. The other thing I would say about this, I did like a hypothetical little project for myself, very quick, very easy, very dumb. Okay.
Mhm.
I thought to myself, okay, well, if you're the players and you agree to a salary cap, then the other thing that we know has to come with it, at least part of it, is we have to get a salary cap floor. There's other things that you should win if you actually agree to a salary cap. I imagine what ends up happening is some sort of soft cap situation, kind of like the NBA has, or something like that. But if it was a hard cap, that's what I did. I did a hard cap and I did a hard floor. Okay. And the hard cap I put was at $275 million.
Okay.
Okay. If that happened this season, this year, based on the payrolls that are out there right now, that would cut $327 million of money that is going to players, right?
Mhm.
But if we instituted that $150 million salary cap floor, that's $448 million that the players would end up making, coming back to the players. And I want you to think about that, because I think everybody has this joy in their mind that is like, they institute a cap and then the Dodgers have to trade away Shohei and Mookie for pennies on the dollar. Like, that's the dream, right? Like, you get to see the teardown of that team. I just want you to also think of the other end of that. The Marlins payroll is $78 million this year. $78 million. For them to get up to 150, the amount of shit ass contracts that team would have to hand out just to like garbage players just to hit that salary floor is also going to have some sort of impact. So there's going to be unintended
by the way,
we go.
By the way, let's look at it that way. Let's use your hypothetical. What was the floor that you gave? 150? And right now they're paying 78.
Yeah.
Right? So that's an extra, what, $72 million that they would have to add on? If you're the owner of the Marlins, I understand you got to come out publicly and be like, we need a salary cap. We can't compete with the Dodgers. But every Major League Baseball team that gets purchased, years later when it's sold, is sold for 10, 20, 30x the value of what it was purchased at. It's a great investment. It goes up in value no matter how incompetent you are. It's kind of perfect if you think about it, if you're a billionaire. So if you're the Marlins, you get to play poor and everything like that. But right now you're paying $78 million. With a salary floor, all of a sudden you have to pay $150. You have to double your expenses in arguably the most prolific area of expenses. You have to take on another almost 9 figures of expenses. But here's the other thing. If you have a salary cap, there's no more revenue sharing.
That's right.
If you're the Marlins, a lot of your payroll is subsidized by the Dodgers. When the Dodgers pay Kyle Tucker $60 million a year because they're so far over the cap, they have to pay another $60 million into a pool that goes to these poor teams. The Tucker contract went there. The Edwin Diaz contract went there. Everybody the Mets just signed, that money goes there. Some of the Phillies guys, that money goes there. So these teams are receiving money. And even with that money coming in, they're like, we can't afford to go over $80 million in payroll. So now you're going to cut off that money and tell them you have to double your payroll, essentially. They're going to take such a bath in that scenario. And by the way, I'm sure they could still afford it.
Of course.
But if you're a businessman, you're like, you are cutting my profits by 70%.
Yep.
I don't understand why any owner would want to do that. So I think a lot of it for some of these teams is posturing. I think if you're a mid-level team who's above that 150 anyway, yeah, maybe it's legitimate. Maybe it's legitimate if you take a team like, say the Mariners. who are like, yeah, we do want to spend money, we do want to win, and we won't have the same financial capability of Los Angeles. That's legitimate. But for all of these bottom feeders, right now, they're basically fielding a team for free because they're getting millions and millions of dollars in rev sharing, and then they're not spending a whole lot. So, yeah, I find it hard to believe that they actually want this.
Well, I mean, I the cost certainty of it, and I'll say this: like, I know that, for example, probably Jerry Reinsdorf for the Chicago White Sox is one of the owners that's like, we need to have a salary cap. But I don't even think they're thinking of the unintended consequence of that. There's no way the players agree to a cap without a floor. And there's also no way the players agree to a cap with a floor without getting rid of some of the other things that her player, like, I would bet service time years need to get cut. I would bet that the qualifying offer, that's dead. Like, that's gone. Can't have that anymore.
Yep.
Yeah, there's numerous things like that that would need to happen for the players to even consider this. But I think the heels are dug in so far on this issue. It's a shame that there's going to be a lockout, and the timing of this thing couldn't be any worse, right? You've got, you just had an incredible World Series between the Dodgers and the Blue Jays. You're about to go to the World Baseball Classic, for which the United States team has put together the best team it's ever put together. I mean, it just is. And so, like, everybody loves that. That's going to be incredible. And then you're going to have a whole season with the likeliest scenario being that the Dodgers don't win the World Series. I mean, listen, they could totally, but the most likely scenario is that they do not. This is like Tiger versus the field.
Yeah.
The most likely thing is that it's the field. And so you're going to go in with all of this excellent momentum and people seeing your young stars and all these new TV deals and like more eyes on your product, and then go straight into a lockout. It's foolish shit.
I'm old enough to remember how long it took them to recover from 1994.
Yep.
And the only way they were able to do that is with a steroid scandal. So
steroids.
Maybe if we're looking for a silver lining, and any fans who are like, even if you support a salary cap, I cannot relate to any fan who's like, I'm willing to lose the 2027 season. I'm not. What are we doing here? Baseball's fun. Don't take it away. Like, for a thing that I don't even think is going to fix it. But if they do mess up, maybe they got to start pumping these guys full of juice again. So fingers crossed.
Well, another guy that might need to pump himself full of juice just to get healthy again. Pablo Lopez now has a significant UCL tear. Pablo Lopez very likely to miss the entirety of this season. Last season was great. 2.74 ERA. That's a career best mark. And now you're sitting on a guy, 2 years, $43.5 million contract of, like, you're getting nothing this year and you're getting less of what you thought you were going to get the year after that. They had a big fire sale last season, but they said, hey, this season we're going to compete. They just lose, maybe not the ace of the staff, but certainly the second ace of the staff. Where are you at with the Twins now? Like, is this maybe a situation where, how quickly does this change, I guess, with Joe Ryan, Byron Buxton, guys like that on the Twins roster, who you would have thought, if you're going to sell all these other guys last year, why are we not also moving Buxton, moving Joe Ryan? So where are you at there with that situation?
It didn't make a ton of sense to me that they were like, we're doing a limited fire sale. Like, we're getting rid of, like, the sheer quantity of players that they traded was really, like, startling. But they were like, we're holding on to Ryan, we're holding on to Lopez, we're holding on to Buxton. They have a lot of good young pitching. They got some more back in those trades. They have a lot of, like, depth rotation-wise. In theory, it's a lot of theoretical depth because the guys are young and you don't know how they're going to respond at the major leagues. But they have a lot of guys who could go out there and compete for these spots, which I actually love. I don't think that they are in a serious position to contend over the next 2 years, which to me means trading Buxton and Ryan would be the move. I mean, in hindsight, you could sit here now and be like, wow, we should have traded Lopez, because 2 years and 43.5 didn't look that bad for Lopez 2 days ago. Now it's a disaster. It is, you might get a half a season out of that. And in addition to this elbow problem, he missed half the season last year with a shoulder issue and then a forearm strain that they're saying is unrelated to the UCL. So it's like that guy's entire right arm has been a ticking time bomb for a minute here. And it's kind of off topic, but that's why I would never want to invest. I don't think we'll ever see people investing like Ohtani or like Soto level money in a pitcher. Like, I think anybody who gives $500 million to even Scooble or Skeens, it's too risky with the UCLs. I really feel that way. It's a shame. It's a shame because I am a fan of any small market team that at least makes an effort to compete. And they said they were going to try to compete this year. That's why they weren't trading Joe Ryan and Byron Buxton. Now, their offseason moves are not consistent with that narrative. They didn't really go out. Victor Caratini is your big free agent get. It's kind of hard for me to sit here and be like, oh, yeah, I could see it. You're really trying to compete. But that being said, the fact that they weren't trading those guys, at least publicly, they were saying they weren't, I found to be admirable, if not confusing. But now it's like, dude, you might as well. You're not going to win. Even in the AL Central, you're not going to win with this roster. You have a bunch of good young talent. You might be good in 2 years, but you're not going to be good for the next 2 years. So just keep it moving. Get rid of those guys and build up the farm a little bit more, I think.
Yeah, you touched on it a little bit at the end there. You certainly can say a lot of shit about competing when you're hanging out in the AL Central, can't you? You just be like, oh, yeah, we might. And they were right. Like, they might, for sure, right? The thing about the Lopez injury is, like, does it bury their team? No, as you said, they're actually decently set up for this. A lot of young arms in the rotation that they traded for last year. Taj Bradley, Mick Abel is not even a guy that's probably in the rotation right now.
Might be now. Simeon Woods Richardson.
Yeah. There's a bunch of young talent there. You still have, as we've mentioned, Joe Ryan. But, like, look, at the end of the day, and this kind of goes with what we were just talking about with the lockout, like, if you know that thing's coming and you have, number one, another pitcher who is one of the pieces that you might deal. And number two, the other guy you might deal is Byron Buxton, who, over the last 2 years, we've seen Byron Buxton a lot, and he's finally flourished into what I think everybody thought he was going to be in the first place. But, man, it was a lot of injuries before those couple years. You know what I mean? Like, that guy was not playing a lot of baseball for the majority of his career and has finally seemingly turned the corner there. So, I don't know, man, especially with the just gross amount that you seem to be getting prospect-wise for trading anybody that's even relatively good. Seems like a perfect time to pull the trigger, especially if there's going to be a lockout where, you're not hanging on to those contracts through this thing, getting no value while they're not playing for you. I'm not sure why they didn't pull the trigger. Like, it's funny to say you're going to compete when you traded, like, the entirety of your bullpen last year.
Right.
Griffin Jacks, Yohan Duran, Louis Varland was nails in the World Series for a while there. And so, like, all that went out the window, and granted, they've been pretty good at developing pitching. Not the same when it comes to developing hitting. Actually, they're kind of a fascinating team with how often position players just, like, injure themselves into the abyss. Like, it's just a lot of guys who can't stay healthy. And so it was a nice thought, and a thought that's, like, completely reasonable just in that joke ass division. But now that we're here, like, the time should be just kind of ticking down here. Try to get the money that you can in the door in the first half of the season, and then
And part of it is for complete transparency. Byron Buxton has a no trade clause, and he seemed hellbent on not waiving that and not going anywhere.
Sure.
But then you heard rumblings in the offseason that he might be willing to waive it now, and now the Twins are like, no. So I think those guys need to get together and be like, look, if you're still standing at the trade deadline, A, what a miracle. B, please go somewhere where maybe you can win.
Give me the list of teams. Yep. Immediately. Give me the list of teams. I'll find something.
Exactly. All right. Speaking of people who can't stay healthy, Kris Bryant. Kris Bryant, I'm sorry to do this to you, Jeff. I know that this is a tough one for you. Kris Bryant did an interview. He's at Rockies camp. He will not be playing this season. He will not be playing anymore ever again. They can't come out and say that. If you remember the David Wright situation, the Steven Strasburg situation, every so often this happens where a player has a degenerative condition that is just not getting better, but for insurance purposes, they can't come out and say, I'm going to retire.
Yep.
They have to sit there and pretend that they are not going to retire and they're trying to come back, even as all reports are, this guy cannot walk. I mean, in the same interview, Bryant was like, I wake up in pain every day. Every time my feet hit the ground, I feel like I might fall down. And I saw a headline about it feels like there's lightning shooting through my body constantly. And by the same token, they're like, so are you going to retire? And he's like, I didn't say that. Who knows? Like, we're going to see what happens. And it just becomes this slow, like, death march that's really sad to watch. You remember Strasburg and the Nationals have bad blood because they put out a statement saying he retired a couple of years ago. And then he had to come out and be like, I didn't say that. And it's like these guys are, maybe not Hall of Famers, but they deserve to go out kind of on their own terms. But for insurance purposes, they can't. Obviously, the contract has been an unmitigated disaster for the Rockies. The comparisons to Anthony Rendon are unfair insofar as like Rendon seems to hate playing baseball and Bryant desperately wants to be out there, but just can't. But if we're comparing like value on the field for money spent, it's pretty close. This is just it's about as bad as it gets for the Rockies. Of course, as a Cubs fan, I feel like I already know the answer to this from you. But if this is truly it for Kris Bryant, what is his legacy?
It's another one of those of just like unfulfilled potential. This has been going on for so long now with the Rockies, and is going, there's no end in sight. This is something, by the way, that like if we're going to negotiate something in the CBA, like there has to be a better solution for all parties involved for situations like this. I don't know what it is. Like maybe there's just like a fund that all the teams pay into on the side that like you can do an injury settlement or something like that. Like Kris Bryant doesn't want this microphone in his face anymore. He doesn't want to do this stuff. He wants to go like lay down and just like work with specialists that can mess with his back until maybe he can have a normal life into the future. People forget, because this has been going on so long, how fucking incredible Kris Bryant was. First of all, of course, part of the team that broke the curse for the Cubs, of course. I'm going to give you the first 3 full seasons of a bunch of players that are playing right now. Best of the best, I think you would say. These guys, I think, are all going to end up in the Hall of Fame. I'm going to give you, per Fangraphs, their wins above replacement, their value as a player for their first 3 full seasons, okay? Mm-hmm. Aaron Judge, 17.9. Bobby Witt, 18.7. Shohei Ohtani, pitching and hitting, put them together, 19. Francisco Lindor, 15. Juan Soto, 11.6. Trey Turner, 12.1. Jose Ramirez, 19.6. Ronald Acuna, 16. Kris Bryant, 20.6. This was a fucking superstar.
Yep.
Won an MVP in his second season. Broke the curse for the Cubs. Like, this dude was so good and on a Hall of Fame track. Like, he just was going to be one of the best that ever did this. And it's another career that got robbed. Ironically, the person that I couldn't mention in the first 3 full seasons is another guy like this, and Mike Trout, although he got to have much more of his career, and even now has much more of his career than Kris Bryant does, because that's like 25 or 30 or some shit like that. But like Bryant was so good. I mean, offensively, he was better defensively than anybody ever thought he was going to be. He was a great base runner. He just, goddamn, he was just so good and a little bit underappreciated because during those teams, you know, everybody loved Rizzo. Everybody like if Rizzo wasn't your guy, Javi Baez was your guy. You know, there was different iterations. There were so many prospects at that time that everybody, some people's favorite was like Jorge Soler. Oh, that's the guy I love. Or Addison Russell, which worked out how it did. But Kris Bryant was unquestionably the best player on those teams. He was the best one. He was the superstar that allowed them to be competitive and allowed them to get to the point where they won a World Series. And all of this is a fucking shame.
It is a shame. Yeah, it's terrible. But here's the beautiful thing about Kris Bryant compared to some other guys that have had their careers shortened by injuries or whatever. Kris Bryant's legacy right now, because we're all prisoners of the moment, and, we should be talking about what's going on right now. And right now, you look at him and you're like, man, he's the guy who couldn't stay healthy. It's a shame. It's a tragedy. It's this, it's that. Legacy is a weird thing where it has a way of working itself out. And we tend to remember the good times. And Kris Bryant has the MVP. He broke the curse. And not only did he break the curse, but the image of him fielding the ground ball and smiling right before he threw it. He wasn't like, removed for a defensive replacement in the last out. He's like watching he was the guy, the play that ended the curse. He was the guy who made the play. And you look at these other guys, whether it's across whatever sport, Tracy McGrady won a championship on the bench. The last man on the bench with the Spurs his last year. Derrick Rose won the MVP, but never won a championship, right? A lot of these guys, Griffey never won a championship, but Griffey is so otherworldly great and had way more of a career before the injuries took over than like Bryant did, but he's another guy that people look at and to a degree they go, what if? It's crazy to look at a guy with 630 homers and go, man, what if?
Yeah.
But that's what people do. But for the guys like Bryant, who were the brightest of stars and then burned out almost as quickly as they came because of injuries, I think you look at guys who don't win a championship and who don't have that moment, and maybe those guys have that unfulfilled potential. But I really think the narrative with Kris Bryant 20 years from now, people will barely even remember that he played for the Rockies. First of all, because he barely did play for the Rockies, but time heals all wounds to the point where people, especially Cubs fans, but really everybody, when I look back at Kris Bryant, I'm going to remember the final play of the 2016 World Series. I'm going to remember him winning the MVP in his second year. I'm going to remember him being the first guy that really blew up this service time argument where teams were manipulating guys by bringing them up halfway through the season. That was the guy where everybody was kind of like, you better put this fucking guy on your roster immediately.
Yeah.
Don't bullshit us with the service time. I mean, he was such a supernova type star. And it's a shame. And I'll tell you one other angle that it's a shame from, in addition to everything else. It's a shame because I've never seen the Rockies have like a 50 home run guy. I've never seen the Rockies go out and get somebody who's like MVP level offensively and just put him in that field. I was kind of looking forward to like, what do 7 years of Kris Bryant at Coors Field even look like?
Yeah.
And we're never going to find out. But the bottom line is it's a damn shame. I feel terrible for the guy. But his legacy ultimately is cemented. He made a ton of money. He made an impact on the sport that nobody could ever take away. And they never will.
Yeah, look, and he's still going to make a ton of money, going forward throughout his career. I'm sure, like, even with what's happened, he's got the face if he wants to go and do TV and stuff like that. But like, at the very least, what he'll be able to do, and I was really bummed at the Cubs convention this year. They did a 10-year anniversary, and Bryant didn't go because he thought it would be disrespectful to his team and all that sort of stuff. But it was a bummer that he couldn't go have that moment. But like the second that dude ends up retiring or leaves baseball, I hope he heads to Wrigley and gets the flowers he so richly deserves. Because I mean, goddamn, like again, you forget how bright a star that was. And it's a damn shame that it ended up this way.
And yes, he is. I just want to add this real quick. He is very handsome. Some people say he has Pat Barker eyes. I've heard that a lot.
All right. I'll give you that.
We got the baby blues.
I don't want to, but I have to a little bit. You do have really nice eyes. And that's it. All right, Pat. Let's see how quickly we can move through that. I'm not sure, because this might get into a discussion, because this is like the thing that weirds me out the most, just like looking at this roster. But like, so the Padres were like, all right, we need pitching depth. That's what we need. Okay. And so in the last 48 hours, they've signed Griffin Canning, German Marquez, and Walker Buehler. That was a minor league deal, but Walker Buehler, we've heard of that guy before. They just signed Nick Castellanos after the Phillies released him. I look at this roster and I'm it just makes me feel weird. Do you think, are you for the stockpiling of arms? Are you for the Castellanos signing? Like, where are you at with the 2026 San Diego Padres?
I might have a different answer were I not in this situation with my Philadelphia Phillies, where they're apparently going to go into a season with 6 theoretical starters, one of which is getting over thoracic outlet syndrome and won't be ready for the start of the year, one of which had a 7 ERA and he barely pitched last year, one of which has never pitched in the majors. I have been begging my team to go out and sign any one of these guys. Do I think German Marquez has anything left in the tank? No, I do not. I don't. Do I think Griffin Canning does? Yeah, he was pretty decent last year with the Mets. Do I think Walker Buehler does? I don't know. But the point is, they might. It's better to have guys that maybe might have something left in the tank versus nobody.
Right.
Depth is so important. We just talked earlier about Pablo Lopez going down with a UCL tear, and that's why I said I would never spend big money on like pitching. Listen, they didn't spend big money on anything. They gave almost nothing to 3 different guys who have at one point or another in their career succeeded at the major league level. They bought 3 lottery tickets. You might lose 3 lottery tickets. If any of you listening have ever purchased 3 lottery tickets and lost, it's happened to all of us, and it's really just not that big of a deal. So I love it. I love the stockpiling of arms, and I wish my team had done it, frankly.
Yeah. I don't think it's this move or this set of moves particularly that weirds me out about this roster. It's just that I look at this thing and it feels like a husk of what the idea was. Like it felt like a team where like it was an arms race with the Dodgers, where you were going to add star upon star upon star upon star. And we've ended up with like how that can all go wrong if that's not also supplemented by a strong farm system. Now, they emptied out a lot of that farm system to go get Juan Soto, and then Juan Soto left. And, really all of the young production they've got is from like Jackson Merrill, who wasn't very good last year. And now it's a bunch of, there's a lot of 32, 33, 34 in the starting lineup right now. The pitching staff is interesting, right? Like the pitching staff is like, okay, Michael King, he's solid. Nick Pivetta was really great last year. Now we're adding some interesting depth to it. That's all great, but I just look at this thing and I'm like, man, it sort of feels like you're one of the teams that should be trying to go the other way. And maybe it's because they have a bunch of these bloated contracts for guys like Machado, guys like Tatis. And so it's harder to move those and get value back. But man, it's just, this doesn't feel right. This roster doesn't feel like it's going to do anything.
Well, yeah, I mean, look, at the end of the day, you got to find a way to compete in the National League West. The Padres tried any number of things. They tried getting all shortstops and just moving them around the field. They tried getting superstars. They tried trading for superstars. They tried giving up their farm system. They tried, expanding their farm system. They tried everything. So at this point, they're like, I don't know, Griffin Canning? Who knows? Who knows? We'll see what happens. And like when you add those guys, like number one, probably two of them are not even going to make the team coming out of the thing. They'll be released during spring training. You're taking a flyer. You're seeing what happens. Bueller probably has the most upside. Canning is the safest. Marquez, I don't see it working at all. But he's a guy who spent his entire career at Coors Field. Maybe getting out of there will help him.
Totally.
And, you see what happens. And worst case scenario, you sunk a few $1 million and you just kind of move on. But really, if you get to a point where if any of those guys come up and give you a solid 10 start stretch during the season, they made their money. You don't even need a good full season out of those guys based on what you're paying them. If you get 10 good starts out of them during a stretch when you have an injury in your roster or something like that, then you are getting your money's worth. And I think we need to keep that in mind. The cost is so minimal. The return doesn't have to be that great for this to be a good investment. Let's end with the World Baseball Classic. We want to talk about this last week. We got sidetracked by different things. I want to talk about it this week. And I put together a list. I thought a fun way to do this would be to take the three teams that are acknowledged as the favorites, the reigning champions in Japan, the United States, and the Dominican Republic. And I thought, what if we compared them position by position? Now, what I did was going through these, I kind of realized that a lot of the Japanese players are not going to get the respect they deserve from me and maybe you as well, because I'm not familiar with their game. If they haven't played in the majors, I really don't know a lot about them. So apologies in advance for that. I hope our Japanese fans don't hate us forever. But let's jump into it right now. And what we'll do is we'll go position by position. I'll ask the first one, and we'll go down the list here. We'll start with catcher. This one to me is pretty clear. The American squad marching out Cal Raleigh, the guy who hit 60 home runs last year. The Dominican Republic has Austin Wells, which I don't even know how that works exactly. I'm going to need to see that 23andMe test. And Japan has Yuhei Nakamura, who I admittedly am not familiar with. Jeff, who you got on this one?
Yeah, this is Cal Raleigh, and it's not very close. We don't have to spend a ton of time on this. This is a guy that could have, and in some cases, some people's minds should have won the MVP last year. Incredible season, incredible catcher, and like you forget, we mentioned it last time. We mentioned Cal Raleigh, maybe the best defensive catcher in the game as well. Now let's switch over to first base. Oh, this is interesting. I'm going to be interested to hear what you say. So for the U.S., we've got Bryce Harper. For the Dominican Republic, we've got Vlad Guerrero Jr. And for Japan, we have Munetaka Murakami, who signed with the Chicago White Sox this offseason, and they immediately spelled his name wrong on his nameplate in his locker at spring training. Who you got at first base?
I don't think it's particularly debatable. I like having a player that I've heard of on Japan. But that being said, I haven't really seen him play a whole lot. And then it comes down to Bryce Harper, Vlad Guerrero, and diehard Phillies fan, obviously, but this is not close to me. Vlad Guerrero is better right now than Bryce Harper is, and I don't see how anybody could see it the other way. I'm going with the Dominican Republic, so it's 1-1. Let's move over to second base now. And the American squad has a couple of interesting guys, but one of them is more of a utility guy. So we're going to pencil in Bryce Terang as the starting second baseman. The Dominican Republic has Ketel Marte, and the Japanese team has Shugo Maki. So Maki, Marte, or Terang, who you going with on this one?
Yeah, this one is another one that feels pretty clear. I do think we're coming up on a couple that aren't very clear, but this one still, for me, Ketel Marte is head and shoulders above everybody else on this list. Although Bryce Terang is an interesting guy going forward. Let's move to third base. This one I do think is interesting because I know we're going to get to a guy that you like. And this is three guys that I think that there is good reason to like. So for the Americans, Alex Bregman will be playing the hot corner. For the Dominican Republic, Manny Machado, the great third baseman of the previously mentioned Padres. And then for Japan, Kazuma Okamoto, who I know you like. So I'm interested to see who you pick at third.
Yeah, I like Okamoto. I wanted the Phillies to get him because I like his profile. He doesn't strike out a whole lot. But from what I understand, he's not a superstar on the level of a Bregman or a Manny Machado. So I think it's got to be one of those two guys. In researching this, the funniest thing to me, or the most surprising thing, was that Manny Machado was only 1 year older than Alex Bregman. Machado has 14 years in the majors. Bregman only has 10. So I really thought that Machado had at least 3 or 4 years on him. No, Machado just debuted young. That being said, I do think that right now Bregman is probably the superior player. Machado is coming off of 3 straight years, just under an 800 OPS, which is, still solid. It's better than league average, and I think he's the superior defender. But I think you're going to get, more offensively out of Bregman. So I'm going to go with Bregman and tie this thing back up at 2.
I thought you were going to upset us right there with Okamoto. Man, oh man, I thought you were going to do it.
No, I would like to, but I don't think it's reasonable right here. Let's move to shortstop, where the Americans march out arguably one of the best players in baseball, Bobby Witt Jr. The Dominicans have Geraldo Perdomo, who had an excellent year last year, and then the Japanese team has Sasuke Genda, who, again, I don't really know a whole lot about. Who you got in this one? Genda versus Perdomo versus Witt.
Yeah, I'm not getting any of the fun ones. This is definitely Bobby Witt Jr., but I'm glad that you shouted out Perdomo's year last year because it was crazy good. And I mean, who knows? Ketel Marte was kind of a late breakout into superstardom. Maybe that's the same thing for Perdomo. Moving on to the outfield, and we'll start in left. The Americans trotting out, I assume this is a guess because Pete Crow Armstrong in left field when he is the best defensive center fielder in baseball. All right, whatever. And then Dominican Republic has Juan Soto, and Japan has Masataka Yoshida. Who are you feeling in left field, Pat? This one, I don't know.
Yeah, I kind of took a guess when I put PCA out there. Realistically, he'll probably be the center fielder and Buxton in left. I don't think either way it changes the results of what we're looking at here. It might change him in center. So for the purposes of this, let's flip it. Let's say Buxton in left. So it's Buxton, Soto, or Yoshida. Yoshida is one of the few players that I've actually gotten to see, and he's just not anywhere near the level of certainly Juan Soto. So. Boy, we're going back and forth. You get all the Americans, I get all the Dominicans. It is 3-3. And let's move to center now, where we have now shifted the matchup. It's going to be Pete Crow Armstrong facing off against Julio Rodriguez from the Dominican Republic. And, of course, Lars Nootbaar repping Samurai Japan. Who you got in this one?
Pete Crow Armstrong, my favorite Chicago Cub in a long time. Very much feels like a Javi Baez in the outfield. Love him dearly. Absolutely cannot take him over Julio Rodriguez, who I still think there is a potential MVP season inside of that guy's career. Could be this one. So we'll go ahead and break the tie and put Julio Rodriguez in center field. Moving to right. This is a good one. Okay. Kind of. So in right field, the Americans are going to trot out Aaron Judge. I don't know if anybody's heard of that guy before. The Dominican Republic will have Fernando Tatis Jr. And Japan will send Chicago Cubs Seiya Suzuki to right field for the World Baseball Classic. Who you got here?
It's close. I lied. It's Aaron Judge. All right, so it's 4-4. Japan's still yet to get on the board, although I think that's about to change because we are in the DH portion of the program. The Americans have Kyle Schwarber. The Dominicans don't really have a set DH, so I went with Junior Caminero because I thought he was the best remaining player who was not listed amongst the fielders. And, of course, Team Japan has Shohei Ohtani. Jeff, who you got?
Yeah, I would love to take Kyle Schwarber here, but cannot do anything but take Shohei Ohtani as the DH. Japan finally on the board. Let's keep going here, but let's move to benches. So who we've got left on the bench? Which bench would you rather have? For the Americans, we've got Will Smith, Gunnar Henderson, and Roman Anthony. That's pretty good. For the Dominican Republic, we've got Agustin Ramirez, Jeremy Pena, and O'Neal Cruz. That is also very good. And then for Japan, we've got three guys that, look, we don't know. And so we don't want to start saying their names improperly when we already aren't going to pick them for this category.
Yeah, it's a shame. I mean, the thing about Japan is, like, obviously this is where this exercise falls apart because they're the defending champions for a reason. And, I've kind of backed us into a corner. This was my idea, and I backed us into a corner where we have to make fools of ourselves by being like, I never even heard of these Japanese guys. And then they come out and kick the shit out of everybody, right? Like, that's what's going to happen. And I didn't intend for it to come across as this, like, obnoxious. It's just that none of us have access to NPB baseball on a regular basis. And what I tried to do with the benches here, each team I put one catcher, one infielder, and one outfielder. The American squad, up till a few days ago, it would have been PCA out there with Corbin Carroll and left. But now Roman Anthony comes in. I think even with that downgrade, the backup catcher being Will Smith is just such an advantage over everybody else. When you look at the Dominican marching out, Austin Wells and Agustin Ramirez as their catchers, that's a huge advantage. And then Gunnar Henderson is another potential MVP in the future. I think the Americans have the deepest bench here, so I'm going to go with them. So right now it's 5 for the Americans, 4 for the Dominicans, and 1 for Japan. And we are going to go to starting pitching. And boy, I didn't do the full 5-man rotations. I went with 3. But get ready for this one. For the Americans, Tarek Skubal, Paul Skeens, and Logan Webb representing the Americans. That's their big 3. The Dominican squad, Christopher Sanchez, Sandy Alcantara, and Luis Severino. And for the Japanese squad, Yoshinobu Yamamoto, Yusei Kikuchi, and the newest Colorado Rocky, Tamayuki Sugano. What do you think?
So this is a really this isn't interesting. Okay, I would take the Americans, but I will say what's interesting about this particular category is if I had one pick on one pitcher for whatever, I think I would be a fool not to take Yoshinobu Yamamoto. I think, like, especially in a like chips are down situation, like I just fucking saw it, so like of course I would take that guy. Then I looked at the Dominican Republic and I'm like, man, the top 2 of Christopher Sanchez and Sandy Alcantara, especially if Sandy Alcantara is what he seemed to be at the end of last season, that's pretty fucking great. But then, like, when you just look at Skubal, Skeens, Webb, like, I mean, it's not really that close here in this category. So I will take the Americans here. Commanding lead for the Americans at this point. And now let's move to the bullpen. Who is going to be closing these games out? Not Shohei. He's not pitching. They're not allowing that. So we can't have that great he strikes out Mike Trout moment, which is a huge bummer. But that was fucking awesome. Anyway, bullpen for the Americans, David Bednar, Mason Miller, and Clay Holmes. For the Dominican Republic, Sir Anthony Dominguez, Carlos Esteves, Abner Uribe. And for Japan, Yuki Matsui, and some other guys.
Yeah, it really hurts not even having Roki Sasaki here. I mean, that would certainly help out a lot. Um, Again, I just have to go with America versus the Dominican here. Bednar, Miller, Holmes, Dominguez, Estevez, and Uribe. I'm gonna go with the Dominicans here. Mason Miller looked like he was cooked for a brief period last year. Bednar is always kind of one of those under the radar guys that's really, really good. But I don't have a ton of confidence in Clay Holmes. So I'm going to go ahead and go with Team DR on this one, which makes the final score US 6, Dominican Republic 5, and Japan, Otani.
It's pretty much how it's going to work anyway.
I'm so looking forward to it. I can't wait for the World Baseball Classic. I love it. I think everybody, if you're not on board with it right now, you got to get on board with it. It's so much fun. In 2023, it was an absolute blast, and I think it's for the betterment of the sport. So I would love it if we ended up with another scenario. I mean, that feels like the dream scenario last time. I don't know that you can replicate that. But these games are great unless you're a fan of like Team Great Britain, in which case it's going to suck.
Yeah, it's going to be no fun. But there even are some teams in this thing that like for some reason, like I look at the Italian roster and I'm like, hey, that's interesting. There's some interesting stuff going on over there. Or I look at Team Mexico and I'm like, all right, maybe. Then like randomly Team Netherlands is, is like very good. So it's like, maybe somebody comes out and surprises you, but boy, oh boy, did the United States is trying to win this shit. That is for sure.
Yeah, they're going for it, man. And it's one thing I love, and I certainly don't want to get too deep into this, but I will say no matter what is going on in the country, whether I agree with it or disagree with it, whether I am at the moment, quote unquote, proud to be an American or ashamed or embarrassed or whatever, the moment you put, athletes against each other competing, I turn into fucking Abraham Lincoln, dude. I will be there. I will be waving the flag. I will be. And it means nothing. It's not an endorsement of anything we have going on in this country. It's just I'm a competitive guy. And you tell me that this is who I have to root for. Okay, done. Okay. And, living in LA, if the Americans don't pull it off, I'll be rocking my Team Mexico hat. Let's go. Viva.
Yes, let's go ahead and get a win, straight away, so that we can go into the season and it doesn't hurt as bad when our teams inevitably collapse either just before or just inside of the playoff.